everybody. Wait for a couple people to join on here. A little early this morning. Hope everybody's having a good week. It's Thursday, Thirsty Thursday. A lot of people like Thirsty Thursday. We're almost Friday. It's almost the weekend. What's up, my brother Matt? Wanted to share something with you guys quick. Man, dealing with failures, to me, it's been the toughest thing I'd ever have to deal with as an adult, as a parent, as a business person, as a friend. And oftentimes with the way that we deal with failure is to avoid it. Or we let it just, discourage us from trying. And, there's a time and a place for that. It's not everybody is willing to put forth the effort and the time and the heartache that it takes to deal with adversity. But I'm listening to a good book right now by John Maxwell. By the way, I get a lot of messages and people are like, hey man, thanks for sharing. I had someone ask me yesterday about, how did you learn to become a leader? And, I'm just blatantly honest about it. I read or listen to books and then I take action. I anything I've really learned or anything that I do as a person or a business person, 99.9% of it I've plagiarized from somebody else. So if you want to, become a better leader or become a better real estate agent or become a better investor or become a better person or a better parent, one thing I can share with you is everything that I've been able to accomplish really in the last 3 years, which I think personally for me, I've grown more and developed more as a person in the last 3 years than I did the previous 10. And I owe it all to reading books and surrounding myself with people that are either moving in the same direction as I am. They share a similar set of goals, a similar set of core values. And I've learned a vast amount of knowledge from those people or stuff that I've read. So either reading books or surrounding yourself with people is the best way to, what I would say, accelerate the learning curve rather than just making mistakes and kind of, figuring it out as we go along. But one real good lesson I learned this morning as I was reading a book, it gave two examples about leadership. And it talks about what they call servant leadership. And really, it's just the mentality and the proven concept that real leaders have been able to adjust their thinking where they put people first. So like a common, way of framing this would be when you first meet somebody, a lot of times our natural tendency may be, okay, what would be in this for me? Like, what am I going to get out of this exchange? What might I stand to benefit from this person? When we meet somebody new, we greet them and we're assessing the situation. But oftentimes the natural tendency is for us to kind of assess that situation from our perspective. What is in it for me? What should I expect from this person? Am I going to selfishly make a decision about whether or not I want to make this person a friend or how I'm going to communicate with them is normally almost always about us. And when people really are able to hit the switch and find themselves, really reaping the benefits of leadership, it's because they're able to take situations like that and switch their thinking and say, I wonder how this person's doing. Is there anything that I might be able to do to help? And show genuine interest in the development and the furthering of other people's mission. And I know it seems difficult. I mean, there's this preservation and survival mechanism that all of us have inside that, makes us look out for us. But I can tell you that, even in my own personal experiences, all of the blessings that I've had, and again, more so recently than ever, I worked my ass off for 10 years. And I can tell you for 10 years, it was almost always about me. I wasn't, I didn't use people, I didn't manipulate or take advantage of people, but almost every relationship in some way or other benefited me more than the other person. Regardless of compensation or regardless of anything, I had always looked at every relationship, professionally and even personally before my current wife, as what I was getting out of it. Is this fair to me? Am I happy? Is this person giving me what I expect out of a relationship? And it wasn't until I changed my thinking to say, what can I do, or what can I offer, or what can I give to this person or this group of people, and that's when I really started to see things change. But so the point of this would be my today lesson that I learned while I was reading talked about failure and failing forward, and why it is absolutely essential as part of our growth. I mean, we hear people talk about it all the time, but it's so easy to say, and it's literally the hardest thing to do, right? Like, anybody can go get a t-shirt that says, fail forward. Anybody can tell a story about how Michael Jordan got cut from, the basketball team in 10th grade, and then eventually went on to be, one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest player of all time. But what's hard, what we don't often talk about, or what doesn't necessarily get the glory, is the process in between. The constant failures. He didn't just fail that one time. And if you ever watch the story, or you listen to the story specifically about Michael Jordan, he failed multiple times. And that's not what gets the attention. I mean, we talk about the 6 championships that he won. But, there were several individual and team losses along the way. And one of the greater things I took away from that story is how each time, whether it was an individual matchup where someone got the upper hand on him and, said something to him at the end of the game that was maybe a little bit spiteful, and he would take that, and that would give him the energy he needed to prepare for the next game or the next series or whatever, and then go out and give a world-class performance. The failure is what gives us the adversity to be more prepared as we could, continue to grow, as we continue to take on bigger challenges. It is 100% necessary for us to have things like emotional maturity, the ability and a proven track record to deal with adversity. And the one example that they gave is there was this college professor that had given, he split the class down the middle. And he said, this side of the class, you're going to be judged solely based on the quantity of your work. And they were making pots. Let's say it was like clay pots or something like that. So 50 of the kids are going to be judged on the quantity of the pots that you produce. And then this half of the group, this half of the classroom, you're only going to be judged on the quality of the group. And here's what he found at the end. The group that was going to be based on and knew where they're going to be based on the quantity of their work cranked out pot after pot after pot after pot. They were just producing and failing and making and making and making and making. And what happened at the end, the net result was the nicest, highest quality pots that were made came from that group. Why? Because they did it over and over and over. And each time they made a pot, they learned from it. The next time they did it quicker and better. The group that was so concerned about quality spent far more time, and the lesson of this will make sense in a second, planning and strategizing about how they were going to make the pot and what's the best size and, what's the best process. And at the end of the day, they didn't fail enough. They didn't, this actually debunks in part the theory about quantity over quality, because honestly, the way that you get to quality is to fail over and over and over and over again. So you actually, in most cases, have to do a tremendous amount of quantity to get to the highest level of quality. You may have to make or build 100 boats before you make the best boat. And if you think about almost any company or any manufacturer or any large corporation that is known for quality, you could almost assuredly go back and look at their progress, and at some point they did a tremendous amount of quantity. And failures don't always show up like as these big, massive, failures that are a mess. A lot of times they just look like a variation or a slight imperfection. So the lesson that I took away from that was, because the quantity over quality is one of those taglines that we all hear about. It's like, hey, it makes sense to me. But when it comes to growth and personal development, when it comes to leadership specifically, when it comes to the development of a person, it is absolutely 100% necessary to fail. So the only way for us, or for me, because I can only speak from my experience. I'm not a, a psychologist. I'm not a person that's done these grand things or spoke or led thousands of people. I can just tell you about my own personal experience. And the difference for me has been when I've actually accepted failure as part of the process, right? Trust the process. That's something we can all relate to, right? There's the basketball team, the Philadelphia 76ers, and one of the things their taglines is to trust the process. So when you start to look as failure as a necessary step along the way, I think we can better absorb it. I mean, dealing with failure psychologically is a lot of times just an extremely challenging thing to deal with. It can sometimes be embarrassing, deflating, disheartening. I mean, it can be extremely challenging to deal with. And the only way, and I had this conversation with my son the other night, we 100% control how we respond to failure. It is 100% an internal issue. It is 100% psychological. It is 100% a mindset. So if we just reframe our thinking around failure and look at it as a necessary part of the process, it's a milestone along the way towards our ultimate goal, it's going to give us a much better chance of being able to internally cope with that and not let it end, not let it stop us, not let it discourage us. So think about that. I mean, one of the things, if you think about people, any success story that you hear about, there's almost always a backstory that talks about a series of failures that they went through. And, sometimes that's a price that a few of us aren't willing to pay. My son the other night, we talked about a basketball game, and it wasn't his best effort. And it was because he, in that moment, was willing to sacrifice, the potential of the joy of being, let's say, the hero in a game. And for him, the pain of potentially trying and failing was greater than the perceived joy of hitting a game-winning shot or being the hero of the game or being a member of the team. And that's a real thing. Like, we deal with it all the time. When we constantly weigh our options and think about what it would feel like to fail versus the perceived joy that comes along with, accomplishing our big goals, a lot of times it's easier for us as people to relate and even feel what failure could feel like because we've experienced it. So it's more real for us versus trying to wrap our head around what it would feel like to actually feel, the accomplishment that comes along with doing what we set out to do. So anyway, this was intended to be a short video. I want to take all night. But that is the lesson that I learned today about failing forward. And that would be simply that sometimes quantity is a necessary step towards quality. And what I mean by that is you may have to do something 50 times and fail before you're able to do it one time and do it perfectly. So just think about that, embrace that part of the process. Look at failure as a milestone on the path to success, not something that gets in the way. It builds adversity, it builds maturity, and those are all things that ultimately, that if you look at people that experience overnight success, what happens to them a lot? They lose everything. Why? Because they didn't go through the process of failing along the way, which would ultimately give them the ability to deal with adversity and the maturity that is needed to retain success and remain successful. And then enjoy the fruits of their labor for decades rather than being an overnight success and then almost an immediate failure. So just something to think about. It was extremely encouraging for me day in and day out. There's things that I fail at that if I allowed it, would keep me from driving forward and would, kind of make me rethink whether or not I wanted to move in a direction of something that, could be a tremendous opportunity for me. So hopefully that's helpful. I hope everybody has a great day, and I'll see you soon.